The first shell does not kill the orcs. It lands inside the camp. Canvas tents rip apart, cooking fires scatter into dust. A woman screams to your left, but the sound vanishes under the next impact. You are a refugee on Armageddon. You have been one for weeks. The war came, and the war never left. Now the ground shakes again, not from orc boots, from artillery. You look up through the smoke. Giants stand in the haze. Their armor is yellow and black. Their weapons are still hot. They do not look at you. They do not wave you forward. They fire again, and the shells pass over your head, into the tents behind you. Someone calls them saviors. Someone else is too dead to ask. The shells do not distinguish between refugee and raider. Canvas tears. Earth erupts. Bodies that were running moments ago simply stop. Through the smoke, giants advance. Their armor is yellow, slashed with black. Their weapons are leveled not past the camp, but through it. These are Space Marines. They are not here to evacuate anyone. They are here to kill orcs, and the camp is between them and the enemy. You press yourself into the mud because standing means death, not from the orcs, from the rescue. The chapter bearing down on your position calls itself the Marines Malevolent, and in this moment, on this field, that name requires no explanation. Every shell that lands among the tents is a deliberate choice. The Marines Malevolent are a loyalist Space Marine chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. They wear power armor painted yellow with black accents and trim. They serve the Emperor of mankind. They have never fallen to chaos. They will fight orcs, tyrannids, heretics, and demons without hesitation. By every official measure, they stand on the right side of the galaxy's longest war. But among the 1,000 chapters that defend the Imperium, the Marines Malevolent occupy a specific and deeply uncomfortable niche. They are not celebrated for their mercy. They are not remembered for shielding the weak. Their battle record is long, and their methods leave little room for anyone caught between them and their objective. They are not known for compassion. They are not known for evacuation protocols. They are known for one thing above all: completing the mission, regardless of what stands between them and the enemy. This is the third war for Armageddon. The orc warlord Ghazghul Thraka has unleashed the largest Waaagh the planet has ever seen. Green-skinned warriors pour across the ash plains in numbers beyond counting. Imperial forces are stretched thin across the ash wastes. Hive cities burn under smoke-choked skies. Supply lines collapse. Entire regiments of the Imperial Guard dig in and die where they stand. Millions flee into the wasteland with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the hope of survival. The planet's defenders are stretched to breaking. The Marines Malevolent deploy to Armageddon as part of the Imperial Defense Force. Their arrival is not a relief operation. It is a combat deployment. They are here to kill orcs. Everything else is secondary. Refugee camps dot the ash wastes beyond the hive cities. Thousands of civilians fled there when the Waaagh broke through the front lines. One of those camps is called Emperor's Deliverance. The name will become a grim joke before the fighting ends. The chapter's battle doctrine treats civilian presence as a tactical variable, not a moral obligation. If orcs mass near a camp, the camp is simply within the engagement zone. The artillery does not adjust its fire pattern to account for non-combatants. The mission parameters do not require it. When the orc columns reach Emperor's Deliverance, they do not carefully avoid the civilian shelters. They push straight through them. And the Marines Malevolent are already in position, weapons aimed, waiting. The orcs reach Emperor's Deliverance in a wave of rust and muscle. They do not maneuver around the camp. They charge straight through it. Warbands use the tents, the supply stacks, the fleeing bodies as routes and cover alike. The refugees are no longer bystanders. They are terrain. The green tide swarms past razor wire and sandbag walls. Scrap-forged wagons crush anything slower than an orc. The defenders fire into the mass, but the mass does not stop. Then the sky changes. Drop pods hammer the earth at the camp's edge. Thunderhawks roar overhead, ramps already dropping. Yellow and black armored giants stride out into the dust. The refugees see Space Marines and reach for them. They believe rescue has arrived. What arrives is something else entirely. The orcs reach Emperor's Deliverance. They do not carefully avoid the civilian population. They charge through it. Warbands use the refugee camp as cover, as a route, as a source of loot. The civilians are trapped between the green tide and whatever defense the Imperium can mount. Tents collapse under rampaging bodies. The wounded cannot flee. The living have nowhere to go. Fires spread through the camp's perimeter. Orc war cries mix with human screams. This is not a battlefront with clear lines. This is a slaughter that happens to have a camp in the middle of it. And then the sky changes. Drop pods and thunderhawks deliver armored giants in yellow and black. The refugees see Space Marines and believe they are about to be saved. The Marines Malevolent do not form a defensive perimeter around the camp. They do not begin evacuating civilians. They do not move to separate the orcs from the refugees. Instead, they set up artillery positions and open fire into the camp. Into the orcs, yes, but also into the tents, the wounded, the children, the people they came to protect. The logic is cold and simple. The orcs are inside the camp. The camp is the target. Shells do not distinguish between green skin and civilian. The Marines Malevolent know this. They fire anyway. The first salvo lands among the flimsy shelters at the camp's eastern edge. Fireballs rise where families huddled minutes before. The refugees who had cheered the yellow and black armor now run from it, and the bombardment has only begun. The shells fall on Emperor's Deliverance for hours. Tents collapse, field hospitals burn. Refugees who survive the orc migration die in the bombardment meant to save them. The orc advance does break. Green bodies pile beside human ones in the mud. The Marines Malevolent log the engagement as a victory. Their after-action reports use clean language. Collateral damage, acceptable losses. No distinction is drawn between enemy dead and civilian dead. Both are counted as obstacles removed. The chapter moves to its next objective. Behind them, the camp smolders. What remains is not a liberated population, but a cleared grid square. This is not an accident. It is a deliberate calculation, and it reveals how this chapter treats every resource it holds. The shells fall among the tents. The dead are counted in thousands. The living are not counted at all. The Marines Malevolent log the engagement as a success. Enemy advance broken, position held, casualties within acceptable parameters. That word, acceptable, does not include you. It does not include the mother holding a child beneath a collapsing wall. It does not include the medic who raised his hands and was buried. The chapter moves on. Their armor advances to the next firing position. Behind them, the camp burns. The smoke rises in columns, visible for kilometers, and that smoke is seen by others on Armageddon. The Imperium fields many chapters on this world. They do not all share the same doctrine. They do not all define victory the same way. One chapter values human life above tactical efficiency. They see the smoke. They move toward it. The Imperium is not a single will. It is a fractured empire held together by doctrine, fear, and the occasional arrival of warriors who disagree on what salvation means. On Armageddon, that disagreement becomes visible. The Salamanders are also present. They are a Space Marine chapter, loyal to the same emperor, bound by the same war. But where the Marines Malevolent treat civilians as terrain, the Salamanders treat them as people. This is not a tactical preference. It is doctrine, rooted in the teachings of their primarch, Vulcan. The Salamanders believe the Emperor's subjects are worth saving, not merely worth defending. 2 chapters, 1 war, opposite definitions of duty. And on Armageddon, those definitions are about to collide over a single camp full of refugees who thought rescue had already arrived. The Salamanders carry the teachings of their primarch, Vulcan, as a living doctrine. Where other chapters see a population as terrain, the Salamanders see people worth saving. This conviction is not a tactical preference. It defines who they are. On Armageddon, this difference becomes lethal. The Salamanders learn what happened at the Emperor's Deliverance refugee camp. Civilians were killed not by orcs, but by artillery fired into their midst by the very Space Marines who came to protect them. Tushan, chapter master of the Salamanders, does not send a message. He does not file a protest through Imperial channels. He goes directly to the captain of the Marines Malevolent and delivers a blow, a strike that echoes through the honor culture of the Adeptus Astartes. He confronts the captain of the Marines Malevolent. This is not a diplomatic exchange. It is not a strategy meeting between allied commanders. Tushan raises his hand and strikes the Marines Malevolent captain across the face. One Space Marine commander physically rebukes another. In the honor culture of the Adeptus Astartes, this act carries weight beyond words. A blow between chapter masters says what no battlefield communique can say. It declares that the target has violated something sacred. It says the protection of the Emperor's people was abandoned. It says the artillery that fell among refugees was not necessity. It was failure. The Salamanders do not wage war this way. Vulcan's sons do not accept that civilians are expendable. and Tushan makes clear that what happened at Emperor's Deliverance was beneath the standard of the Emperor's warriors. The Marines' Malevolent captain does not recant. The chapter's position, as conveyed in the lore, is essentially that the mission was successful, the enemy was stopped, and civilian casualties are the cost of war. There is no apology, there is no admission of error. Tushan's strike lands as a physical rebuke, and the Marines Malevolent absorb it without changing their doctrine. They do not concede that shelling enemy positions among refugees was wrong. They do not acknowledge that the dead civilians were anything other than an acceptable price. In the honor culture of the Adeptus Astartes, this refusal to bend is itself a statement. It says the chapter believes its own calculus is correct, and that no other Space Marine's judgment will override it. Whether the Imperium itself agrees is a separate question entirely. The Imperium's response to the Emperor's Deliverance incident is, in the available records, silence. No Inquisition censure is documented, no trial is convened, no formal rebuke from the High Lords of Terra appears in any accessible archive. The Imperium is fighting a war for survival on Armageddon, and the Marines Malevolent are loyal, effective, and present. That combination, it seems, is sufficient. The bureaucracy processes the dead and moves on. The engagement report reads cleanly. Enemy advance halted, sector secured, casualties within acceptable parameters. Whether censure occurred in undocumented channels remains genuinely uncertain. The records are incomplete. No prominent account of punishment survives. And so the question shifts from whether they were punished to whether punishment was ever the point. The engagement report closes with a clean classification. Enemy advance halted, sector secured, casualties within acceptable parameters. That phrase sits in the archive without amendment. No Inquisition file follows it. No Salamander's protest forces a revision. The Imperium records the Marines Malevolent as a loyal chapter on Armageddon, and the record stops there. But the question remains. They are loyal to the Emperor. They have never wavered. They fight with a ferocity that breaks orc charges and holds lines others would abandon. They will die standing against humanity's enemies, without hesitation. If you measure a chapter by battlefield results alone, the answer is simple. If you measure them by the civilians buried beneath those results, the answer becomes something the Imperium prefers not to examine. Can the Marines Malevolent be called heroes? The question has no clean answer in Warhammer 40K, and that is the point. They are loyal. They have never betrayed the Emperor. They fight humanity's enemies with ferocity and effectiveness. They will die holding the line against the orc, the tyrannid, the demon. If you are an Imperial commander looking at a strategic map, the Marines Malevolent are an asset. But if you are a refugee at Emperor's Deliverance, they are the thing that killed you. Not the orcs, not the war. The artillery shells that fell from yellow and black giants who called your death a victory. The Salamanders and the Marines Malevolent represent two visions of what a Space Marine should be, and the Imperium has never resolved which one is correct. The Salamanders see a refugee camp and think, these people must be saved. The Marines Malevolent see a refugee camp and think, this is a firing position. Both chapters are loyal. Both serve the Emperor. The Imperium is vast enough and desperate enough to need both. That is the uncomfortable truth at the heart of this story. The Marines Malevolent have never been declared excommunicate. No inquisitorial edict has stripped their charter. They wear the yellow and black with the authority of a founding chapter, and they answer to Terra. The Imperium does not punish them, because the Imperium cannot afford to discard a full chapter of Space Marines, no matter how many civilians die in the process. Acceptable losses is not a phrase the Imperium invented for them. It is the doctrine the Imperium was built on. The Salamanders see a refugee camp and think these people must be saved. The Marines Malevolent see the same camp and think this is a firing position. Both are loyal. Both serve the Emperor. The Imperium is vast enough and desperate enough to need both. The Marines Malevolent are never formally censured for what happened at the Emperor's Deliverance camp. No Inquisitor strips their chapter master of rank. No Imperial decree brands them renegade. The absence of punishment is not approval, it is arithmetic. In a war for species survival, a chapter that wins is worth more than a chapter that is kind. The grim dark truth settles over everything. The Imperium cannot afford to exile every brutal commander who delivers results. It needs them. And that need is what makes your death possible. The Imperium has never formally excommunicated the Marines Malevolent. No inquisitorial edict has stripped their colors. No tribunal has dissolved their chapter. Their yellow and black heraldry still flies over war zones where the Imperium needs bodies in power armor, regardless of what those bodies do to the people they are supposedly protecting. This silence from the institutions of the Imperium is not mercy, it is arithmetic. A chapter that breaks orc sieges, holds contested ground, and returns victories is too expensive to discard over the deaths of civilians the Imperium has already written off. The Salamanders remember the refugee camps. The Marines Malevolent remember the wins. Both records exist in the same archive, and neither has been erased. What the chapter carries into those wars tells its own story about how long they have been fighting, and what the Imperium has given them to do it. The Marines Malevolent use old and captured equipment because they are a chapter that has been fighting for a very long time with limited support. They do not have the deep Forge World ties of the Ultramarines. They do not possess the ancient relic armories of the Blood Angels. They take what the battlefield provides: a bolt gun recovered from a dead brother, a vehicle captured from a fallen foe, armor plates welded and re-welded across centuries of unrelenting war. Their war gear is a physical record of a chapter that prioritizes function over ceremony. Every scarred surface tells the story of a war that never ends, and a supply line that never fully arrives. They do not polish, they do not display, they simply endure, choosing utility. They save the planet, they do not save you. That is the equation the Marines Malevolent have always been solving. Not how to protect the innocent, but how to end the threat with the resources at hand. A refugee camp is terrain. Civilians are variables. Orcs are the target. The math is cold, and the chapter does not hesitate. When their artillery opened fire on Emperor's Deliverance, they were not making a mistake. They were making a choice. Victory over appearance. Mission completion over the lives of those they were supposedly protecting. You become a data point in an after-action report. You become acceptable losses. And in the grim darkness of the far future, there is no justice left for the dead. Appeals process. No memorial. No reckoning. Only the next battle, and the next camp, and the next set of shells falling where people used to live. The name Emperor's Deliverance was supposed to mean salvation. Under the Marines Malevolent, it meant something else entirely. The Emperor delivered you from the orcs, and into the artillery range of his own sons. The chapter remains loyal. Their doctrine does not bend. Their colors fly yellow and black over fields where refugees once stood. Whether they can be called heroes is a question the Imperium does not ask, because the Imperium does not need heroes. It needs war won, and the Marines Malevolent win wars. The cost is counted in people the Imperium never intended to remember.